It's strange how a day can tip sideways without warning. A small slip, a brief reaction, and something inside feels unsteady. And suddenly the ground doesn't feel like yours anymore. There's a quiet moment when words outrun intention. A sharp reply. A tone that escapes before the mind catches it. It comes fast, almost effortless, as if the mouth moves on its own. Then the echo lingers longer than it should, heavy and restless. That subtle loss of control leaves a familiar sting, a sense that something should have been held, but wasn't. And in that space, the mind flickers with regret. Soft, persistent. A reminder that even a few loose words can tilt the whole inner balance. Then there's the impulse that wears a softer mask. The quick purchase that promises a brief ease. The small reward, the tiny escape. The feeling of just this once. It lands with a rush, then fades with a dull weight. The relief is thin, almost hollow, and after it passes, the numbers, the clutter, the quiet disbelief settle in. The momentary lift reveals its cost. It's not the object that hurts, but the way it exposes a crack in the inner restraint. A warning that comfort without intention often asks for something back. And deeper still, the thoughts that loop without mercy. They form a narrow corridor, and the mind keeps walking it. Same turns, same shadows. A pattern that feels self-feeding, tightening with each repetition. It doesn't shout. It traps softly. The more it spins, the smaller the world feels. And inside that shrinking space, the sense of self fades a little. A drifting, as if the mind has forgotten its own steering wheel. One short sentence rises like a stone. Not this again. In the middle of all that, a strange reactivity takes over. A scattered feeling. A life lived in quick jolts rather than steady ground. Small things feel louder. Simple moments feel slippery. The body moves. The voice speaks. The day unfolds. But something inside feels slightly off-center, ungrounded. As if a thin thread tugs you from moment to moment instead of a steady step. And under the noise of it all is a quiet, reluctant truth. Losing control rarely arrives in big storms. It arrives in tiny shifts, barely visible, easy to dismiss. But the weight of those shifts is real. And the feeling they leave behind is unmistakable. A soft emptiness, a tightening, a quiet frustration that doesn't ask for attention but refuses to leave. It stays in the background, tugging, reminding, insisting. A single thought rises, still and clear. Hold yourself. You know the moment when a stream of words rushes out before you even notice. It feels harmless, but it drains something quiet inside. A slow leak of presence, a soft collapse of weight. And the strangest part is how easy it is to ignore that loss, until you hear yourself and realize the tone carries no force, just noise, just escape. And the room listens less. You feel it, a small sting, a small truth. Unnecessary words strip away the edge you meant to keep. One slip at a time, one breath too quick. The power you thought you had fades because you traded it for the comfort of filling silence. You sense it immediately afterward, a dull regret, a feeling of stepping out of yourself. Quiet would have held you steadier. Silence isn't passive. It takes effort to stay with it, a narrow stillness you have to choose, even when your thoughts scramble for a way out. That restraint sharpens you. It forces your mind to settle before you act. It creates a brief gap where dignity regathers itself. A pause that returns you to your own center. And in that pause, you see the impulse more clearly. The tension eases. The reaction shrinks. You come back to something calmer, something firmer. Silence becomes a kind of shelter, a place to breathe, a place to hold your ground without pushing or retreating. A small anchor, steady. There's a moment when you choose what to say, not out of fear, not out of restraint for its own sake, but because you understand the weight of letting emotion drive the sentence. The urge to defend, the urge to prove, the urge to explain. They all rise fast, too fast. If you speak from that place, the words come out thin and restless. They don't land the way you hoped. But when you wait, just long enough for the swell to pass, your voice becomes deliberate again, shorter, clearer, more grounded. You feel that shift, a quiet discipline that reminds you who is steering, a small line, strong. And then there's the quiet advantage no one mentions. Silence reveals more than speech ever could. It leaves others exposed to their own assumptions, their own haste. You watch as they fill the space you refuse to rush into. You see their uncertainty, their impatience, their need to be heard first. You don't have to answer. You don't have to match their speed. Silence does the work for you. It gives you a clearer view of the moment and of them. And in that clarity, something settles in your favor. Not through force, not through performance, just through stillness. A quiet advantage. There is a quiet moment when the mind starts to pull apart what is felt and what is chosen. An analytical space opens, a place where emotion is no longer the center, only one piece of the picture. That shift matters. Emotions rise first. They color the body, quicken the breath, tighten the jaw. Their influence is real. But the movement that follows is never automatic. It only becomes automatic when attention drifts. And that drift carries a cost. A small one at first, then larger. The feeling speaks loudly, and the body obeys too quickly. But obedience is still a decision. Quiet, unnoticed, yet always a decision. There is power in creating distance. A single breath, a pause that interrupts the pattern. The feeling remains, but the grip loosens. Space forms between impulse and movement. Even a thin sliver of space can change the direction of a day. A slow inhale, a slower exhale. Something settles. The mind returns to its own weight. That distance is a form of strength, small, steady. In that space, emotions can be observed without being swallowed by them. No judgment, no resistance, just noticing. A quiet naming of what moves under the surface. This softens the push from within. The emotion loses its urgency. Its momentum slows. It becomes just another sensation, like a passing current beneath the skin. Neutral, temporary. A moment recedes. When the noise settles, something else becomes clearer. A choice, not based on the rush of the moment, but on what actually matters. Values speak softly, but they speak steadily. They are not dramatic. They do not surge through the body. They wait. And when the emotion fades, even a little, their shape becomes easier to see. Acting from that place feels different, more grounded, more deliberate, more aligned with the person one tries to be. And the feeling eventually passes. Always. It never stays as strong as it first appears. It only lasts long enough to test whether the mind remembers its own authority. A simple truth settles in the quiet afterward. Values endure. Emotions move. Choice remains. Money reveals values and self-command in a quiet and undeniable way. It does not argue. It simply shows how a person moves when no one is watching. There is always a moment, small and almost silent, when a choice is made. To follow a craving or to follow a principle. And in that moment, the inner state becomes visible. The pattern repeats, again and again, until the numbers themselves start to mirror the mind. A calm pattern reflects a calm center. A scattered pattern reflects a scattered one. The numbers don't lie. They echo what has been happening inside. Spending should align with values, not emotions. Desires rise quickly, often louder than expected. There is that familiar pull, the one that promises ease or escape. But ease fades. Escape dissolves. What remains is the aftertaste of a choice that felt good for a moment, but shifted something inside. A small drift. A quiet regret. Paused for a second. The decision looks different. Stripped of urgency, it becomes a question of intention. What matters? What stays? What actually supports the person one is trying to become? And this question, when asked honestly, softens the pull of impulse. Financial stability provides freedom and reduces fear. Not the loud kind of freedom that seeks attention, but a steadier one, almost invisible. It shows itself in the mornings when the mind feels lighter, in the nights when worry settles more slowly. Stability does not silence uncertainty, but it gives the ground beneath it a firmness that changes everything. Breathing becomes easier when each step is not shadowed by a quiet dread. The world feels less threatening when survival is not in question. A small buffer, a small margin. And suddenly fear loses some of its sharpness. Intentional spending supports stability and long-term goals. It is the slow, patient movement of choosing what strengthens rather than weakens. There is no drama in it. Just repetition. Just clarity. A gentle refusal of what derails progress, and a quiet yes to what sustains it. The results come slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. A small shift in direction, a steadier rhythm. Then one day, the gap between intention and action feels narrower. The path ahead looks clearer, and the mind, finally, rests a little more easily. Sometimes a thought drifts in like a stranger passing by a window. It feels close, yet it never quite belongs. There's a quiet moment when the mind notices this distance. A soft reminder that the thing appearing inside the head is only something being experienced. Not an identity, not a verdict, just a movement. And in that small space between noticing and reacting, something steadier breathes. A pause, a grounding, a sense that the self stays still even when the mind stirs. Then comes the slow sorting, the quiet filtering, an inward gesture of lifting one thought, setting another down. Some of them carry weight without purpose. Some only repeat themselves until the day feels heavy. And a few hold something real, something that can be acted on without creating more noise. It's strange how the mind softens when the useless pieces fall away. How the inner space becomes clearer, almost wider. And in that clarity, a simple recognition appears. This is enough. There's a pull backward and forward that shows up in the body before the mind admits it. Regret tightening the chest. Anxiety pushing the breath shallow. It builds quietly, like a hum behind everything. And then, almost unnoticed, there's a return, a settling into what's right here. The weight of the chair, the air moving in small, steady lines. The moment that doesn't demand explanation, just presence. A single point where the mind stops reaching for what isn't here. A still point, a reset. And beneath it all, there's that familiar murmur of inner dialogue. Always speaking, always shaping the tone of the day. Sometimes sharp, sometimes tired. Sometimes repeating an old script that no longer fits. It takes attention to hear it clearly, to notice when the mind starts feeding itself the wrong words. to question a sentence before it settles in like truth. There's a strange power in choosing what gets to stay, what gets to enter, what gets to fade back into silence. A quiet power, almost invisible, yet steady enough to change how the whole inner room feels.